The book is very self-expressive, right? You don't talk at arm's length, and so I would like for you, if you would, to just return
Nicely
the
done.
favor and talk about yourself,
Yeah.
because when folks consider whether or not to buy the book and whether or not to engage you, that's a lot of it is your
Mm.
story. So could I just pass the conch to you?
Yeah, well, the story in terms of how I started in the business, is that really where you're looking at? So, the boxing thing is kind of a recent thing. I've only been doing that for about 15 years. And from a branding standpoint, I tripped into it. So, my background is in restaurant operations, believe it or not. And my degree is in that with a minor in accounting of all things. And so that's kind of where I sharpened my leadership chops. And I was running restaurants and then a whole bunch of restaurants in and around the States. I ended up evolving into education. I'd always been teaching a class or two, so this whole training thing, I just fell into it, and I was really good at hiring, developing people in the restaurants, and they would get promoted quickly, and I would get promoted quickly, and that just became my superpower. And I just never thought it would be appreciated within the restaurants. Like, it was good operationally, but I really wanted to do that full time and really be focused on this whole learning and development platform. So I ended up being recruited by a little company that you've probably never heard of in the office supply space called Staples. Kind of a big deal. Yeah. So
Okay, no.
I had a pretty cool role there and sharpened my teeth in warehouse management, where it was still making a thing. So instead of making a broiled fisherman's platter, we were making reams of paper, and we were making, so it was just a different product, but it was really the same supply chain. Is, get the right people to make the thing and get it to work right. And I had a different approach than most, and it kind of took, where people listened to me. And a lot of the systems in the warehouses are actually like they are today, in part because of some of the stuff that I put into place, which seemed like common sense in the restaurant industry, but apparently not in fulfillment centers. And because of that, I got recruited by a consulting company that was Boston based. I brought in a lot of business, more than the entire sales team, apparently. And so I figured, well, it's time to start my own. And I was doing, graduate work and going to school throughout all this stuff. But I had a feel for what I now call networking. And I didn't know that's what it was really called back then. I was just great at connecting with people. I loved talking to people, learning about them. And that really matriculated into a lot of business coming in, just because of building rapport and trust and all that stuff. And I didn't really look at that as being the sweet science of it. But I looked at it as really just being, I love just speaking to people and learning. And if I can help, then I'll do that. And that became a business model, but I didn't know it at the time. So when I started my own business, which was back in June of 2000, it was a whole different brand. It wasn't Knockout Networking. It was something else. And I was figuring out what I wanted to really do. I was doing a lot of leadership talks and training and things like that. And I ended up falling into, of all places, sexual harassment prevention, that space. And I became the go-to for a while in that. And at one time, I had almost all of the fire departments and police departments in and around New England as clients. And I became that person that got hired to come in and deliver training, or in a sense, fix a problem before I got escalated to attorneys. So the good news is I had a target market and a message. The bad news is I hated what I was doing. And my target market were really difficult marketplaces. Like, this wasn't fun stuff. Like, I was dealing with real issues. And
Yes.
so I was good at that, but it burned me out for a while. And then I got asked to do a talk for a networking organization called BNI, Business Networking International. And they were going to
Yes.
pay me a lot of money to talk about networking. And so an executive director there, was asking about this and kind of contacted me out of the blue, because I knew a bunch of people. Isn't that how it works? And he said, I'd like to hire you to talk about networking. And this was my brilliant response. And by brilliant, I'm being very sarcastic, as in not brilliant. Like, I really said this. I said, networking, isn't that just something you do? Like, I said that, because it just seemed very easy and common sense for me, and that somebody wanted to hire me to talk about it for, an hour in front of like 900 people. But the other side of it is I couldn't imagine how I would explain how to do this in front of 900 people for an hour. It's kind of like explaining to somebody how to drink a bottle of water. Like, you have an hour to do this. Like, yeah, what are you going to do? Like this, you know? So I didn't want to do it. I was, and I kept pushing back a little bit, but I ended up getting it because I asked for probably more money than I should have at the time, and they were able to give it to me. And the reason is because people were paying to be there. And that's important because now all of a sudden I was in front of an audience that really wanted to be there. They weren't forced to be there because of some sort of liability. And I really found my niche because I just spoke according to my notes and my slides of all the stuff that I thought I did well, all the stuff that I didn't do all that well, made jokes of it. And that just became a thing because for the first time, I was really speaking from here. I was speaking about how to connect. And by doing that, I was actually connecting. And I just thought I need to get me more, like some more of this, so that was really the launching pad. And then I just thought, what marketplace really needs this? That's not good at it. That has the resources to bring someone like me in, and that became financial services. And that's really how the whole story started.
Wow, very cool. As a total note of serendipity, 5 authors ago we interviewed Dr. Ivan Meisner, who's the founder of BNI.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's cool. And there are certainly some echoes in what you have observed and learned and are teaching in your book, and the things that he wants to talk about from doing this since 1985. He's such a kind of senior statesman.
No question. And ironically, I actually lead my own national networking organization now. And if it wasn't for, it's called the Networking Group, like TNG, as in the Networking Group. And a lot of it is really because of Ivan, because I got exposure to BNI. I got hired by BNI at one point to help train some of the trainers. And to me, what a fun environment and platform. So I ended up launching my own, and it's really under the Knockout Networking banner. So we have communities all over the country. It used to be live just in New York City and Philadelphia, but now it's mostly virtual, because of the pandemic. So we did that. But now we're starting to have some live meetings, but it just makes really good business sense to keep it virtual because like what we're doing, it's now a national or a global organization.
Well, let us do what we can to dig into this, baby, because I'll just acknowledge right at the outset, if people really want to dig into it, they just need to pay cash money, get the book, and enjoy it. We listen to it, by the way, Michael. You'll like the fact that I listened to this driving the height and breadth of the province of Alberta. So,
well, I understand. It's funny. That they picked the voice for that, and I had suggested getting Mike Tyson to do it, but they weren't open to it.
Couldn't do it, hey?
No.
By the way, that's going to count. I'm making a little CompuBox scoreboard in the corner. You're 2 puns in, and I'm 1. So
nicely
we're
done. Nice.
Score by the end of this.
Well, let's see if I can weigh in with a few others.
This is the book. This isn't going to count for one of yours because it's called Knockout Networking. Subtitle for financial advisors and other sales producers. I would also say, by the way, because so many of our community are actually professional services. So these are organizations where nobody has the word sales on the card. Law firms, niche consulting firms, like I said, fund managers and the like. That doesn't matter. There's plenty in here for the likes of them. So if you'll indulge me, I'll just kind of go down the garden path on some highlights that I really enjoyed. This is one that we have discovered by speaking with authors. These words really matter. And to you, prospect is not the same as the broad total use of that word. A prospect is something technical in your treatment of it. Can I get you to just talk about like a prospect versus a referral versus
well, I even go a bit further than that. Is to me, there's a couple of different types of prospects. There's what I call, and I think I got it from someplace else, I'm not sure, but there's a probable prospect, which I guess in the financial services world they call a suspect. I just don't like that term. But a probable prospect is somebody that you're hoping will be a true prospect or ultimately a client. Then there's a true prospect. So a true prospect is somebody that you're speaking with that's already interested in your services. Whereas a probable prospect is somebody that you're hoping at some point will become interested in your services. And the reason why I think that's significant is because your dialogue and your context around your dialogue is so much different with a probable prospect than it is with a true prospect.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
it's a whole different thing.
And
Yeah,
then,
then there's contacts, leads, introductions, and referrals, right? Which
yes,
takes it the next step, which is where I think you're going, right?
yes,
Yeah. So
yes.
I look at these terms. It's not like they're fact. It's not like you're going to go into like ChatGPT and and you're going to put contact and right. And that's why I think there's so much confusion, is because I really believe these terms are of the eye of the beholder.
Okay.
It's really right. It's really about perception and how you perceive the terms. As a networker, I think it's really important to be clear on your distinction. So if you put out an ask, that that you get what you ask for. Like, be careful what you ask for, you might get it. So if you're really clear on what it is that you're after, more likely that you're going to get it. And so I think
Yes.
these terms are ambiguous. So I've got my own variation of them. And again, I'm not saying that what I'm saying is correct. It's just my perception. And if I could have other people at least be able to communicate and understand what my perception is, then they can help me and I can help them right back, right? Because we're talking about the same thing. Right?
Well, I might challenge you on that. I think you're bringing more to the table than maybe you're giving yourself credit for by delineating these different things.
Okay.
Here's my argument as to why. There's no business school on the planet right now that has a networking stream inside of its MBA.
Yeah.
Well, why not? Why not when every senior professional on the planet is willing to concede that it's more important than, marketing 101? So you have to ask that
I
question.
do teach this. I teach a class at Rutgers University. So
Okay.
so I'm an adjunct professor there, and I teach a public speaking class, and I teach networking skills as a big part of the class because it is a form of public speaking, and these students need to know how to network to be able to land internship and jobs. So I make this whole thing relevant for them.
Right. So great. So actually what's happening is little by little that ground is being crept in. So we talked about Dr. Ivan Meisner. He also, by the way, teaches a module at shoot, I forgot, but it'll come back to me.
Yeah, I think it's in California, right?
Right. So
Yeah.
he also is sort of chipping away at the edge of the standard MBA.
Yes.
But sales is not taught and networking is not taught. And there's a couple
Yeah.
others like it, which are
That's right.
astonishing.
Yeah.
But I
yeah,
think
agreed.
that the reason why is in something like marketing, you get fairly technical definitions where the language has been delineated earlier. And it's
Mhm.
only been in the last, I'm going to say 10 years or so, that folks, you included, are willing to go out and say, you know what, a lead and a contact are different. And I think they're different in this way.
Yes,
And
agreed.
so once that starts to cement and other thinkers and writers start to agree or even disagree, then there's a body of literature for people to look at and be like, okay, this prospecting thing is not just, whatever comes to mind when you walk into the hors d'oeuvres table. Actually, there's something to it. It can be studied and focused on. So that's just me cheerleading you and saying, please don't at all underestimate the value of those separations for new people to the discipline.
Oh, and I don't for sure. I mean, I was working with a group today, and in fact, that was the conversation: is delineating those terms and creating a distinction around each one of them.
Was it? So tell me about that. So you were, was it teaching? Do you describe what you were doing today as
Today was more of a
teaching, or-
training.
Okay.
It was for a wirehouse based in Chicago, and this was a 4-part or 4-round series that I was doing with a group of 35 handpicked financial advisors
Mhm.
that were committing to the 4 weeks, pre-work, post-work. Their field leaders or their managers were part of it. And the whole program is being sponsored by a mutual fund company. So they
Wow,
had
great.
post work. They could be in communication with me about, creating some of the models that you probably read about, in the book. And we covered
Yeah.
that today. It was actually round 4, and we covered, referrals. So I kind of went into, a contact is really just a name. So a list of name on a leads list in my mind is really a contact, because you don't have any contact with them. It kind
Yes.
of works against, right? So, like there's no relationship there. There's no, whereas your lead is, I've got a guy, you got to talk to him, use my name. That's more of a lead. At least there's some relational connection there. An introduction is really just connecting one person to the other, and maybe there's some context around why you're doing it. And then a referral is a very special type of introduction. That is Michael meeting Kevin, and Kevin is looking to bring somebody in to help his team of advisors in the areas of networking and referrals, and is speaking with me to have a conversation to see how I might be a fit. So referral is all of that is teed up, is, Kevin is expecting your call, your email, to set up a meeting to discuss how you might be of service. See, in my mind, that's a referral. But if you ask 10 financial advisors, they might have 10 different interpretations of what that means. So therein lies the confusion as to why it might be, difficult to generate really good referral business.
Mm-hmm. And so I'm not that surprised to hear that for these financial advisors, the lights are coming on when you're separating out these terms. And because certainly, like, correct me if I'm wrong, they must have been thinking about real characters in their life. Like, oh, right, Trevor was a lead. And now I know that that's what Trevor was. And maybe I just had him like taxonomized as like a referral, but that's not what he was.
Right. But a lot of times you can impact that. So if somebody was going to set me up with a lead, I can say, that's really kind of you and I appreciate it. Can I ask a favor? Would you mind going to your lead, right, whatever his or her name is, and mentioning what I do and seeing if there's an interest in speaking with me, with the potential of having me come in and work with his or her firm. And then that happens, I've just now upgraded the storm. I've upgraded the lead into a referral. So often it just takes that conversation, because if somebody is kind enough and thoughtful enough to provide a lead, in their mind, a referral, they don't know, right? Because it's in the eye of the beholder. They've got there's two different interpretations working there. That's not on them, that's on me.
Yes. There's some excellent work being done by two gentlemen, Tom McMakin and Jacob Parks. I was just interviewing them on site in Montana. Thank you very much, Michael.
Nice.
In Bozeman, Montana. Just an awesome excuse to go. But they were talking about the business of referrals internally within a B2B conversation, and why the question like the one you just gave us an example is so valuable, because you can detect people can have a perfectly good reason why they will not give you a full-on referral. And it's just great to know that ahead of time. Like, look, it's not like you're not offering me a great service by passing me a lead, but at least I know what level to take this, right? To
Right.
use your name or not use your name, or lean heavily on the strength of your relationship, or don't touch it at all, or what have you.
Well, a lot of times there's other issues behind that. Number one, financial advisors are a bit fearful and hesitant to ask for referrals because it feels self-serving, and it kind of is. But if you have the power of thinking about it like a networker, you start to use different pronouns. Like, we're in the age of, what pronoun do we use? Well, to me, it's really better served, if you're looking for a referral relationship or a strong relationship, to use we. I would love to explore ways as to how we might be able to refer one another business. Right? Doesn't that just disarm? Now it becomes collaborative. Now it becomes relational. Right? Just that little me flipping around into we, it changes the whole context of the conversation. And that was a big part of my dialogue with these advisors today is, well, how do I generate more referrals from clients? I'm afraid to ask them to appear needy or to bother them or what have you. And I said, well, network with them, right? Establish a right? Because everybody's looking for something, or most people can, use help with something. So have that dialogue. I pride myself on my relationship with my clients. Would you be open to setting aside some time so we can collaborate and explore ways we can help one another? That's pretty powerful. Right? But it brings a brand of networking into the whole context. And then over time, then you can define what a referral actually is for you. And now you can collaborate over that.
Well, and I'll say for those who will listen into this and may reserve a slight strain of doubt, that's not a sleight of hand. That isn't a clever trick of language, because earlier in your book, you describe what networking's about, the posture and the attitude in which you go in. And so I to we is not just it's not a clever trick. It's actually an expression of your true attitude to what the heck you're doing at a cocktail event or what have you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that fair? Am I overstating the case?
Right on.
Yeah.
No, it's right on, because it makes what we're talking about relational, and it doesn't make it self-serving and one-sided. And networking should, not that it should be even Steven, that isn't always the case or always possible. But if our intentions are for that to be, then it's powerful. Especially with centers of influence. I talk about the top 50 list. I was having, again, that dialogue today is developing your top 50 as a financial advisor. And I've got my own of the people that you have good to great relationships with that market to your niche market to your target, but don't compete with you in any way. So how powerful would it be is to be in touch with them every month, every other month, and collaborate and figure out how you can help one another, how you can refer one another. Right.
Yeah.
That it costs nothing. Right. And you can have referral based conversations with them and not feel funny about it, because if it's going both ways, you're helping one another. In fact, most of my business comes off of my top 50 list. The engagement I had today came from somebody right off of that list. Yeah. And there's a story behind it. I won't, but it came right out, and it was very, very easy because we collaborate on a pretty regular basis, and it's a back and forth. Not only does that make good business sense, and it makes it easy, but it's also fun. Like, it's really fun to do that.
Yeah, right. It's so interesting because as you're talking about that, I keep on thinking about all these organizations and all these financial advisory firms in Singapore that we've got to connect you with. So it isn't just because you wrote this book and so forth, but you've made it easy as like a mental toboggan path in my head. I want to make a little bit of a
that the Singapore marketplace in financial services embraces networking. Like, I'm told that they embrace learning. They're very open to development and new ideas, and and that's one of the reasons why it's a marketplace I'm interested in, is because of all those dynamics. Is I think there's really an opportunity to help there. I mean, there's no question.
Yeah, there's well, now you're going to get me on a topic. We're going to railroad this sucker, but I will bookmark the fact that Singapore is a lovely market. Yeah. And it's just interesting in a bunch of ways. It's a concentration of wealth, and it's a country on an island with one city and other stuff. I want to jump, if you don't mind taking a lateral jump, peace statement. I told you that I listened to the book, and that means that when I heard about the peace statement, I heard about it. I didn't read it. So I thought this was something like the Abraham Accords, or so like a general statement about international relations or something. Please, just, this is super stuff. Will you just talk through the peace statement?
The peace statement. The peace statement is my variation of the elevator speech or the elevator pitch. And I don't really like those phrases because, the connotation is that you're memorizing a speech, line and verse, or that you're offering a pitch. And both of those don't feel attractive to me. But what does feel attractive to me is being specific and being collaborative. And I just thought and this is, a lot, long time ago, this is like 20 some odd years ago, I've been, teaching the peace statement. But I thought in a dialogue of folks that I'm meeting for the first time and maybe reconnecting with the second and third, what 4 components do I want them to know about me and that I should know about them? Again, the we thing, right? And that became, well, if we could be clear on one another's profession, that's a pretty good start. If we could be clear on our areas of expertise, that's pretty good, right? Our background expertise, so that's the P and the E. the environments that we serve best and therefore wish to serve most, the environment, right? Your target market, that's the third. So profession, expertise, environment. And then to be able to formulate a very specific ask in the form of what a referral might look like, or what an introduction to a center of influence might look like. That's your C, your call to action. So profession, expertise, environments, call to action. So that can be used in a networking meeting. If you've got, if you're avail the 30-second or 45-second slot of time to give your elevator speech, profession, expertise, environments, call to action, I think is really helpful with that. I think in a dialogue when you're networking with people it's in piecemeal, if you will, where it's not going to be like line and verse, but it'll be peppered throughout because those are four powerful concepts to, again, collaborate about. Like imagine you're networking with somebody and you're both at call to action. You got something to talk about. But I think the real brilliance of that, other than it creates a structure that's very step-by-step and pragmatic for somebody to really, think about, conceptualize, not memorize, but just know the concepts, is that I think the really smart part of this is that it's a marketing plan. Like if you're really clever and you look at the concept of peace, you can determine from a strategic standpoint where you need to go, what you need to say, and with whom you need to say it. And that's networking, baby. And the peace statement helps make that happen. So in boxing, everything is off the jab. Your jab sets up everything else. I think in networking, everything's off the peace statement. The peace statement becomes your jab because it sets up all kinds of really interesting, fun conversations over a period of time.
Yeah, I'll jump on the hayride on the metaphor too. Like the jab has this incredible versatility because it helps you find range. It helps you look for openings. You can vary it up so that it's just sort of like a cheeky little like blinder, or it can be a power punch, under the right training and conditioning. So it's this incredibly versatile thing, which I think is also what you have to have as a professional if you're suddenly stuck at the hors d'oeuvres lineup.
Yes.
Right? If you don't have the versatility in it, and instead you've memorized 5 sentences, you're gonna be like, damn, I'd say my thing, except for it's a stupid 5 sentences that I memorized, which won't make any sense here.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but it makes you really clear and crisp and succinct when you only have a short amount of time, whether it's in a meeting or, how many people do we meet where, so what brings you here? What kind of work do you do? And they tell you, but it's hard to follow them, or they're a bit all over the place, or you walk away not knowing that much more than you did before, which means, kind of bad job, right? But peace gives, gives you a framework. And to me, it's not a script. It's a structure, not a script. It's a framework to be focused for an advisor or whomever to be confident in what they're saying. And it sets up all kinds of other things. And then, am I in the right place? Right? Am I saying the right things? Am I meeting the right people? If it's not relevant and in sync with your peace statement, you may not have the right answers to those questions.
And I just add in what I thought was a great little adjunct from the book, which was that you admonish people for not changing their statement just because they walk into a new environment. I thought that this was valuable.
Yeah, well, if you have a peace statement, and if you want, you want to hear an example of a peace statement?
Hit it.
Yeah. So if you're going to ask me, say, okay, you're the networking guy. What's your peace statement? What's your elevator pitch? I'd say, funny you ask. So I'm a speaker, trainer, coach, boxer, author. My company is Knockout Networking. And all I do is help sales producers grow their business through networking. My expertise is in the areas of referral marketing, networking, and various aspects of recruiting. Almost all of my work is in the insurance and financial services industry with companies like Morgan Stanley and UBS. And really, what brings me to this meeting is that there's financial advisors here. And I'm really looking to gather some intel in the hopes that I might be able to break into the Singapore marketplace with firms like any advice on how I might make a connection like this, I'd be thrilled. So that's a variation of it. So I don't have it memorized per se, but I know
Yes.
conceptually what I need to say. Now, if I happen to be approached by somebody that heads up a I don't know, distribution arm focused on semiconductors, I'm not going to come up with another piece statement that's going to focus on the manufacturing and distribution space that I'm looking to, learn more about semiconductors, because that's not true. And also, it's taking all of this strategy and it's putting it on its ear, and it doesn't make sense. So I would still maintain-ish what I was saying, because I know that's kind of who I am. Not to say that I don't want other business. I do business outside of financial services, just not a lot, right? So I'm not going to make it fit the conversation. In a sense, I'm going to go to the places that I need to go where the piece statement fits the conversation. So if I keep getting, if I keep networking with folks in the distribution space, maybe I'm just going to the wrong rooms. So it's not about making it fit. It's about staying authentic. And as a specialist, if it's appropriate as a financial advisor, you might manage that money anyway.
Mhm. I want to pick up on wrong rooms. You do discuss the idea of high quality venues and let's say wrong rooms. What have you learned there?
Wrong rooms in terms of like the people that represent the wrong avatar as to who you want to network with.
Yeah, I was actually a little bit surprised, and then when the passage went on a little, I was like, I get this now. The idea is like, look, you can go out and network, right? There's an event going on in a medium-sized city every weeknight, right? Can you go out? Yes. Does it mean you should? No. There's such a thing as kind of game selection or venue selection, and saying no to some of these.
Yeah, well, I think, it's what's the best use of your time and what's most relevant to your target market and to really what your goals are. So, if it's a room, where, and this is going to sound bad, I know, but if it's a room where, younger people go, they pay 10 or 15 bucks to go in, and it's got a very social, general feel to it, that might be kind of fun, but it may not be the best use of time because it's not as targeted as it might be if you're clear on your marketplace. If you're going to some place that is like a professional association meeting, where it's mostly your marketplace, and it tends to attract the top 15 or 20% of the folks in that marketplace because of that association, that's probably a pretty good room, because these are people that are investing in themselves. They're out, and there's a common denominator, and the common denominator is that they're either in or they serve your target market, which means not only does that make that room more relevant for you, but there's probably less people in that room that might compete with you. So I really kind of make a comparison of like a general population, like you're in general population, like in jail, right? A general population versus a specialist population, where you're there because, remember, piece statement is a marketing plan. So is this a place that's relevant to my piece statement, or do I have to kind of roll the dice and figure that out? So it's really just a question of, do you want to take that time to roll that dice and figure it out, or do you want to go with more of a sure thing?
Yeah. The boxing analog that makes sense is like styles make fights, right? Like you don't,
Right.
we want to get that combination correctly, correctly configured, so that you've actually got the right people. Well, or the other one might be weight class, right? It's like, look, if you're featherweight, let's not do your sparring with the cruiserweights.
Yeah, which wouldn't even be allowed, right? It wouldn't even be a contest. Like, and that's the whole thing. And I think you're up on me with boxing puns, by the way.
I'm not. It's 3-2, and I shoehorned that one in there just so I could catch up.
Nicely done.
Yeah. I want to hang around the topic a little bit around some of the mechanics. This must come to life, Michael, in your trainings and in your teaching for folks, because I think people love the specifics, but I'll bring up two: eat and drink strategically, and terminate politely.
Yes.
These are just super. They're just super. Can you pick up from that?
Well, eat and drink strategically. You can, and really what you're referring to is what I call the rules of networking. And the metaphor I use is that public pools typically, certainly in the US, according to, the Board of Health, that you need to have rules. I know it's the same in Canada. It's probably the same in Singapore. I'm sure that most countries have their variation of, safety rules and guidelines. And that's kind of where I postured the rules of networking is most people know when they enter a public pool, they know that you shouldn't be splashing and, no food in the pool and all that's, no fun, no. So people know that kind of going in. I just thought, how cool would it be if people knew ahead of time, like, every cocktail party, every conference, convention, networking meeting, chamber mixer, trade show, product show, dog show, if they already knew the rules because it's like affixed to the wall. And there's no such thing, so I wrote them. And that's a chapter in the book where I've got 23 of those rules. And two of them you mentioned. So one is eat and drink strategically. And what that means for me is I don't drink too much, like from an alcoholic that, right? It's just being responsible. Good for my one beer type of thing. So, and there are people that do go crazy and that's fine, right? That's just not me. So I'm going to be responsible about that. But I also like to get there early and do my eating and drinking ahead of time. So now I could focus on the work part of network. It's kind of like out of the way. Like I don't want to be on the line and kind of, dealing with all that stuff unless it's unavoidable. So I want to be ahead of the game. So this way I could be equipped and just feel, postured as I'm speaking with people and not have to focus on the food and bev per se. So that's eat and drink strategically. Another way of looking at that is, which I think is important, is being mindful of the line and being mindful of that, because there's opportunity in that to be able to connect or reconnect with people because they're not so much a moving target anymore. So there's some of that as well. Like everyone has to go this way, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I like to be ahead of the curve. I don't want to be on that line doing that. I want to be ahead of that line.
Terminate politely was something that a managing partner from one of these very elite consulting firms told me, because as I mentioned to you, we organize academies, right? So you talk to people up and down the org chart about what they need to learn, what they want to learn, and so forth. And so he found that these people that were super smart, 3 degrees, 30 years experience, they were going in and they were getting stuck. They were getting penned in the corner. Yeah. And, having a deep and meaningful, when it's like, look, that's all right. Like, I'm glad you're having a deep and meaningful, but it's already been 30 minutes and we're kind of here to meet a range of folks, not just the person whose life story you're taking down.
It's easy to end a conversation with somebody until it is, because in a sense, if you end the conversation and you're doing it actively, you're rejecting somebody, like on some level, right? Now, I talk about in the book that we don't connect with everybody, but I think if you're a good networker, you connect with about a third of the people that you meet. By connect, like you feel a sense, you feel a positive vibe, like you want to talk to one another. Like when you hit it off with somebody, it's just easy to go back and forth with. I refer to that as the 1/3 dynamic. And then there's everybody else, the 2/3 of, not that you're hating on each other, but it's not so easy. It's just okay. Kevin was very nice, and that was just kind of it, but there may not be a lot of there for lots of reasons. So I always talk about focus on the 1/3ers if you can. But every now and then, most of the time, you're going to be speaking with 2/3ers. And again, that's not good, bad, right, wrong. It's just the way it is. And usually if somebody shows up to you as a 2/3er, you show up to them as a 2/3er. So that it's already kind of this unspoken, we'll just kind of go through the motions and talk to each other until we don't have to. So I don't want there to be weird. So I never disrespect anybody. After a few moments, if there's really nothing more to talk about, there's no connection there. Maybe I've got a different view of the world or of networking or of this venue than and that's fine. That might, sound something like Kevin, I've enjoyed speaking with you. If there's a way that I could be a resource to you at this event, absolutely call on me. Otherwise, good luck. And I look forward to seeing you again. And you shake a hand, touch gloves or whatever's appropriate. And then it's over. Right. But at least you're being respectful, and really your olive branch is if I could be of service as we're here, certainly call on me to do that. Another way of doing that is introducing that person to somebody else, but don't do it to get rid of them. Do it because you think that's going to be a win-win. So if you're speaking to a CPA and you know of somebody else that's at that event that happens to be a financial advisor, that could be a good reason to connect them. But now you define that with an introduction. And that's when you say, Kevin, may I introduce you to Bill? I met Bill the last month that we were here. You being a CPA, Bill's a financial advisor. I understand you've got similar niche markets. Would you be open to me introducing the two of you? I think there's a lot of value there. And now I can do that and do the do-si-do, and I'm out of there, but not because I'm looking to escape. I'm out of there because I'm making a valuable connection for them. Mm-hmm. So I would never introduce somebody else just to kind of like get rid of them, because if that person happens to be, of a personality where they're not comfortable or whatever it is, I'm leaving that with somebody else potentially. So I don't want to do that either, so I'm respectful, professional, very mindful. And then there's situations where the conversation is just over. So you're speaking to a one-thirder. So Kevin and I, you and I, we hit it off. We're having a great conversation, but I'll say something like, and I'm being honest because, right, there's something here. I'll say, it seems like there's a lot for us to discuss. And this may not be the place to do that because, I don't want to hold you up. You probably want to speak to some other people, and I wouldn't, I'd love to meet a couple more people as well, but I'd like to continue our dialogue if you're open to it. And if I feel it, you're going to feel it. Because if you show up as a one-thirder to me, I'd probably show up as a one-thirder to you. Does it make sense to exchange cards, a we thing, or QR codes, or whatever the kids are doing these days? And, and I promise that I will reconnect with you over the next day so we could reconnect and coordinate and continue our conversation where we're not so pressed for time. How does that sound? I used to say no, right? Because I'm not getting rid of you. I'm letting you go just so we can continue our dialogue and we can take it the next step. Now, in the book, I mentioned 6 to 8 minutes-ish, but the reality is that's a guideline. Right? So if I feel that we've just got a good vibe going and there's reason to keep, talking, like in the States, March Madness, and there's all, the TV is on and it's fun, then that's okay. Then I may say something like, do you mind if you keep me company a little longer? I don't want to hold you up, but I'm having a blast. So if you're good, I'm good. Now I'm checking in and I'm still being respectful and I'm communicating. So if it's going to be 30 minutes that we're hanging out over beer and watching, basketball and chit-chatting along the way, if that feels right and both parties feel right about that, or all parties feel right about that, game on. But the key is communicating. The key is being respectful. And the key is really showing a sense of empathy, that I don't want to hold you up, but I'm good if you are, type of thing. So all of this is communication and being mindful.
I'm tracking the way that you're speaking about this right now, and it's very interesting to me that you use language like feel, sense, vibe, and I think there's real truth to that. Actually, almost everybody has a pretty good mechanism inside them that says this conversation is almost out of oxygen, right? And now it is, and so or this conversation's an absolute bonfire. It's a barn burner, but I'm feeling a little bit of burden to have more than one conversation tonight.
Yeah.
And so on. So I think I feel like part of what you're providing in this section of the book is some guidance as to what to do with the feelings, because it's not like you have to train people to have the feeling that the conversation's dying. That's a very acute mechanism that's already working.
Yeah, but not most people don't know how to handle that, right? And that's
right.
They don't know how to grapple with that. Now, there's a whole other dynamic to that as well. What if you're at an event and somebody comes over to you and they're just looking to sell you life insurance, right? They're looking to pitch it, right? So that's a big no-no, right? Is no sales at a networking meeting. So that's somebody whose interpretation of networking is everybody's my prospect. Everybody's my probable prospect, So now how do you deal with that? And I've had that happen. And that's just content for me. Like, that's just content, but I'm also respectful of the fact that not everybody knows this stuff. And even if they do, and they are, the forces of evil and all that stuff, I don't want to be a bad guy. at the end of the day, I'm a teacher, I'm a coach. So when that happens, and it doesn't happen very often, but I've had people do that. I remember traveling out of town, and I think I was in Detroit or something, and there was a mortgage banker that wanted to know what my mortgage rate was to sell me a refinance. Well, I'm at this event. I was actually one of the speakers. I just didn't even get up there yet. So, to his horror. But I don't even live here. Like, I didn't come here to look for a mortgage banker. I did not come here to refinance my home, type of thing.
Yeah.
So that became a story, but and I had to say that to him. I said, listen, please don't take this the wrong way. Or I might have said something like, there's no easy way to say this, but I speak about networking professionally. In fact, I'm going to be speaking later. And that's not what this feels like. I don't even live here, so I'm not here to refinance my home. But let's do this over and talk to me about your business, some of the things you're focused on, some of the things you're looking to accomplish, and I'll do the same thing. If there's something to talk about after that, I'm on. And if not, and you don't want to do that, that's okay too. I certainly don't want to waste your time. It felt something like that. And he was apologetic and ended up being a good conversation. But it also became a learning moment.
I am going to borrow somewhat liberally from this section in a module we're developing for a couple of clients. It's about gravitas. I'm not sure if that's sort of like a word you hear, but in the Roman tradition for gravitas, they talked a lot about frankness. So the ability to simply speak what's factual, even when it's not expedient, it's sort of finding the words and so on. It is incredibly, there is a cost. You make a sacrifice to use frankness in professional exchange. But I think something that happens is you walk away about 6 inches taller every time you're forced to do this, and you do have to do it. And suddenly you become much more your own person. So I was just when I was hearing this, it was challenging for me because this is not an area of strength for me personally, but we're writing and studying this on behalf of one of our clients, and frankness is a very rare but precious discipline. And this section of your book had it written all over it.
Yeah, well, it's striking that balance between being direct and frank, to being respectful and professional, because you don't want to embarrass anybody or make somebody feel badly, so if you're doing it with some sort of love, care, and may I share something with you, or there's no easy way to say this, can I just tell you what's on my mind? And and I've done this too, and then so this way it's not an embarrassing thing, and it's conflict, really, but it's how you're handling conflict, and making somebody feel okay and letting it be a learning experience for both of you.
I want to ask about follow-up. So networking, there's a bunch of ways in which I guess the term can be misconstrued. You've disabused people of lots of ways in which it could be misunderstood. But I think one of the ways you're addressing is that it's not the activity happening at the white wine bar between 6 and 10:30. There's other dimensions to this, right? This would be like saying boxing is like just the thing happening every 3-minute block. It's like, well, what about the strength and conditioning? What about the nutrition? What about the road work? What about the focus mitts and everything else? What about the follow-up, right? So people go to this event and there's 1/3ers and 2/3ers and no thirders and the whole lot.
Yes.
What about the following 48 hours, Michael?
Yeah. So the follow-up in my world, I refer to that as the FU, right? That's the FU. So, if there is no follow-up, then it's kind of like you weren't there, in my mind, right? So to me, there's 4 phases of networking. There's 4 phases, and most people think there's only one phase, or they don't have the presence of mind of realizing that there's different phases. So there's the preparation phase, right? That's what you're doing to prepare your mind, body, and soul, and making sure that your peace statement is sound, and that you've got questions that you plan on asking, and you've got goals and really intention, around, when you go there. So there's very few surprises. So it's having your preparation down. A lot of that in my world is connecting with the executive director, whomever is organizing the event ahead of time, and getting to know them and getting to know the board. So when I walk in, that the board is my friend before I even get there. And then they're going to be probably compelled to start to introduce me around, because that's what people do. And I'm already in a warm room before I even get there. And right, you know what that costs? Like nothing. That's just thinking in terms of how do I best prepare myself and set the stage. And also, how can I be of service? I'm going to be there anyway. If there's something you need of me, I'm happy to do that. I've actually been asked to speak at events because the speaker didn't show up or wasn't feeling well. And because of that whole preparation phase, is they've been on LinkedIn, they know who I am. Would you mind? I know you're not prepared. Would you mind putting a little ditty together on networking? And like, no, right in front of my target market. So that's happened more than once, but that's a level of preparation. Presentation is what you're doing face to face, nose to nose, belly to belly. That's when you're introducing yourself, you're asking questions, you're engaging in dialogue, you're collaborating. It's a we thing, not a me thing. Peace statements and the whole thing. But that's what most people think networking is just that presentation phase. But that's only 25% of it. And then there's the follow-up. That's the third phase, the FU, baby. And the follow-up is your follow through on your promises. Because I believe the follow-up stage, the follow-up starts in the presentation phase. And let me say that again, the follow-up starts in the presentation phase. Kevin, does it make sense for us to exchange cards or QR codes or whatever the kids are doing these days? I actually say that, you know, and I promise to reconnect with you over the next day or so to coordinate. You see how I set up the follow-up? I set up the follow-up, right there in the presentation phase. So there's no surprises. And now when I follow through, right, he's a man of his word. And I do it within 24 hours or the next business day or whenever we discuss makes sense, because, you know, you might be traveling out of the country for the next couple of weeks. And I establish that. And I make that note and I make a promise that I will reconnect with you a week from Thursday when you're back in town and when you're settled, and we'll figure it out from there. So what does that say about me to follow through on my follow-up and to have all that, you know, strategically placed? And I own that. I don't rely on anybody else to do it. That's on me. Right. And that's follow-up. And I'm not suggesting that you follow up with everybody that you meet either. Right. And in many cases, we'll call it 2/3 of the cases, there is no follow-up necessarily.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, that was something that I didn't realize was maybe like a little bit of a mental burden in my head, which you lightened slightly with your transcript, your manuscript, which is you go into a room with 100 people and you can follow up with fully 9. Just be like, that was great.
Right.
Those are the 9 I want to follow up with. And
unless all 100 people are somehow your true prospects.
Yeah, in which case it's going to be a tough day, but
That's a good one. That's a good problem to have, right? That's a good problem to have. You know, but you don't have to follow with everybody, you know. So if there's no intention to follow up, don't say it. You know, Kevin, it's been great chatting. You know, if I could be of service in any way or be a resource to you tonight at this event, call on me. Otherwise, good luck today. You know, I look forward to seeing you. Right, it's over. Right. And it's all good because there's just no there. You know, so following up, there's got to be a reason to follow up, and there's only a handful. It's because I can do business with you, you can do business with me, we can do business with one another. There's something that we can learn. There's an introduction to be had on one of or both of our parties, or it's fun. Like it's social. That's it.
Well, let me ask you this, because sometimes the follow-up is going to come the other way. You committed to providing some value, sharing a thing, making a referral, right? You're not the beneficiary, you're the giving party. And I think they're almost more so if you've got this discipline of going, look, that was last night and this is now post coffee the next morning.
Yeah.
I'm just going to fire that thing off. Then it's gone from
right. Well, then your follow-up is then your follow-up is in the form of follow through.
Yes.
Right. You're following through. You're making good on your promise. Yeah. Yes. And that's very admirable too. And I do that quickly. I do it just so I don't forget. And I write it down. And I want to get that done because that makes an impression too. Yeah. And then there's that fourth phase of networking, which is what I call maintenance. So it's preparation, presentation, follow-up, and maintenance. And maintenance is really just a fancy word for staying in touch. So it's having a staying in touch strategy. And again, it's not with everybody, it's with whomever might make sense, and there's reason for that. But that's the
That
cycle.
should be your next book.
Rinse, repeat, rinse, repeat.
I want to ask you what you're reading and writing yourself. What do you how is your own sort of professional curiosity and journey going these days? What are you reading and writing?
I read a lot about referral marketing. I read a lot about organization, like getting the thing done. Getting things done is one I reread all the time. So I'm very much in, and it's a big part of what I teach is owning your calendar and having your model week and working your daily fight plan and being very productive and efficient, and being organized. It's one of my superpowers, and it's found its way into my content. Whereas this networking stuff is great, but if you don't have it organized in a way and it's systematized, it's probably not going to get done, or it's not going to get done well. So a lot of my reading is really just about productivity, efficiency, how to be more organized, how to get things done. And a lot of that is learning how to say no and delegating. And I'm really good at leveraging my time and scaling things. So like as an example, and this was not easy for me to do, like with the networking group, I've got communities all over the United States. And I used to lead them all, and now I lead none of them. There's teams now that are in place that lead all of those meetings. So now I'm more of a strategy. How do we build it, generate sponsorship guy? That took a lot for me to be able to break away and let it go. So a lot of my reading is about how to be better at scaling and how to be better at making the best use of my time and being more efficient.
Very cool. Well, I like that that's something that you're digging into. When we do our interviews, we have to figure out who we're going to pursue and prioritize, and in what order. And so productivity is a future theme that we're going to hit, because we've hit one or two authors whose work dovetails in there. I would consider your book there to some extent, right? There's notes throughout about how to sort of focus on productivity. So if you have authors that you know personally or really recommend, pop me a recommendation on who they are. It's a challenge for us because we do read all the books. We don't just scan or to get a Précis or like a Coles Notes on them.
No, it's editing.
Got to be one you like.
Questions, yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think we got a couple minutes left. So, we got no minutes left. I don't care. I still want to hit you with a couple of boxing questions. So, I think what I want to do is get some like really, really like bias opinions here. So, do you have any real favorites who are like, for you, the boxer from that country?
The boxer from that country.
Like, obviously, countries like Mexico and the United States are massively overrepresented in the sport. Yes. But now and again, you get like a dude from Italy or Portugal or something like this. Do you have any of those that you just love?
I like a number of the Ukrainian fighters, and
Yes.
a lot of their platform is amplified right now, given what's going on. So like Usyk, Alexander Usyk is one of my favorites. So underrated. He should be in a big fight with Tyson Fury, but I don't know if that'll ever happen. But he's undefeated. He was a cruiserweight, went to heavyweight. He is a brilliant boxer. He's very technically sound. His footwork is flawless. He's never been knocked down. He's never been hurt. He fights guys much bigger. He's a southpaw. I just think he's brilliant. So between him and Lomachenko, those two in Ukraine, I think are forces to be reckoned with. There was the Klitschko brothers from there as well. So I think Ukraine is kind of a big, big country on the map that's really over the years, boxing, a lot of great boxers come out of there. So definitely a fan. And in Russia too, there's a couple of really good fighters right now that are on a collision course to fight, to fight one another. So I think that's big. I don't think there's a lot of US, at least in the heavyweights, a lot of US fighters that people just know, just because I think that boxing doesn't have the global reach that it once did for a lot of reasons.
Yes.
But the UK is very prominent right now with Tyson Fury and with Anthony Joshua both being heavyweights, and I don't know if they'll ever fight, but so a lot happening in the UK for sure. I'd like to see Deontay Wilder sort of come back, as being kind of the US sort of statesman on the heavyweight front. But I think it's just way more global than it's ever been, for sure.
Yeah, there's something kind of beautiful about the regional dimension, which is that I asked that question because there's something bizarre almost about the fact that boxers get labeled with a country flag. Because it's not like the nation, they didn't win like the designation from the Olympics or something, right? Like the
Right.
nation didn't say you will be our rep, but that's the way people think about that, you know? So
Yeah.
that
That's
Canelo, it's like he's a
interesting
he's a
because
Mexican fighter, and when he was
yeah,
fighting Pacquiao, was clearly like or Nonito Donaire,
yes,
Filipino fighters. Like, well, they haven't lived there for 10 years.
right.
um, but there is a national dimension to it.
I think more so when you have somebody that's dominant that comes from a certain country. So like Pacquiao, dominant and coming from the Philippines and having the political firepower that he has. I mean, he was like their pride and joy. And I think you see some of that. Canelo in Mexico is a lot of fighters, but Canelo is definitely the most marketable right now. So there's some of that. But there's a lot going on in Russia right now. There's a lot of really good fighters that are coming out of there. And it's less, I think, about, oh, it's Russia. It's just more about that you've just got these great fighters. Um,
Yes.
'Cause one of them is
Yeah.
actually out of Canada. So he's Russian, but he fights out of Canada, and I can't think of where. But Bivol, I like him a lot.
Oh,
He's
yes. Oh, yeah. Also
oh,
technically sound.
he
There's
is so
something about
technically
the
sound, so humble, and he made Canelo really look, silly, like outmatched. And to be able to do that to Canelo, that's saying something. Dmitry Bivol.
yeah, there Lomachenko maybe would be the exception, but the whole Eastern style, like you
Yes.
see, imagine these like 1970s barren
Uh-huh.
boxing gyms where they're lifting like truck tires rather than proper
Right.
weights and stuff, but they are technically so sound. The
Mhm.
Klitschko's were like that, and
Yes.
you mentioned Usyk.
Yeah.
Not fancy,
Um,
not fancy style.
right. And then you have Beterbiev, who is the other Russian fighter, who is
Yes.
just, he's just a bull in a china shop. So he's technical in that he sets up that big right. He's just a big power puncher that he's like a piece of, rock, just, So, Beterbiev and Bivol are on a collision course, so they're both Russian, but they don't really make a big deal out of it both being Russian. They're just both of the dominant, super middleweight, light heavyweight ish, they've got to fight each other. Yeah, and it'll happen because I think it's the same promoter, and that's a powerhouse fight that nobody knows about.
And finally, I'll ask you, what is your style? You do have a couple of giveaways in the book. You mentioned one, two things, maybe as metaphors, but what do you do? What do you do when you're in there? Are you southpaw? What's your story?
No, I'm very Mike Tyson-esque, I would say.
Okay.
So Mike
Okay.
Tyson's my favorite fighter for sure, for lots of reasons. I just think in 2.5 years, he's done what nobody's done in terms
Yes.
of, like in 2 years, he was like 28-0 with I think 25 first round knockouts, right? I mean, that was, I mean, who's going to do that again, right? So I mean, but in 2 years he did that. Whereas now, like in 2 years, fighters are fighting 4 times, right? So he was fighting every 6 weeks at a clip. He was just a phenom. And because heavyweight, and he had a very high peekaboo guard, and he was typically in the ring with people taller than him as I am. So I'm 5'9". So if I'm going to be in the ring with somebody, they're typically smaller and taller. So glasses off, right? So I've got a very high peekaboo guard as well. So I'm very hard to kind of hit in the head because of my guard. I come underneath and I do a lot of body work. And in the amateurs, they don't see that a lot. Got a lot of guys,
Yes.
mixed martial art, they're very wide and they just want to knock you out. And I just try to get underneath. If I can get underneath, I'm very hard to hit. And therefore I have never really been hurt. So I'm able to just kind of burrow my way. And then once I'm in, I'm in pretty good shape.
I like it. If somebody joins the sport late, you've got to figure out a particular style. Otherwise, otherwise it's tougher game with young whippets who started at like 12 and stuff.
It's true. I mean, I did start late, but I love it. And so I maintain this weight. I'm a light heavyweight, 182. So I maintain this weight. So it forces me to be in the ring with somebody that is smaller, taller. And to me, that's
Yes.
perfect.
Well, I don't know how and when our paths may cross, whether it's in the States or in Singapore, because we'd love to have occasion to, have you see clients and other folks there. But maybe we can spar a few rounds if.
Well, let's see if we can make that happen. It'll be a lot of fun.
It wouldn't it? Michael, you've been generous with your time. I know it seems a little absurd sometimes, but we like to thank folks like yourself for writing the books. You don't have to take the time to pen your thoughts, wrestle with an editor and get it all down. But here it is. So we'll advocate that people look at it. There's a specific financial advisor that I have in mind, which I'll just send to you as an email. So in Singapore, but otherwise we'll make sure people understand what you are thinking and writing and sharing.
Well, I appreciate that. And thank you for carving out time and spending so much time with me and for putting the thought and the research into coming up with really some great questions and really making this a great interview. So thank you for that.